Welcome to Taking Charge and Celebrating ADHD. This is the first video of a series of videos that are part of a course, a group coaching course, and also one-to-one coaching that is done alongside mindfulness training to reduce the symptoms of ADHD so you can start controlling it rather than it control you. And also you can start celebrating it because we each have a precious human life. So we're going to start by going through and getting present to exactly what ADHD is. So before we do that, we're just going to take a 1-minute silence to get present and to be here for this recording. Coming to the breath, taking a deep breath in, scanning the body from head to toe, and then checking in with the mind. Just note what's there. And just put it aside. Setting the intention to get present to what ADHD is and what it is not. To empower anyone that has recently had the diagnosis, or perhaps it's a family member that you know that is suffering from some of the symptoms. Opening the eyes, coming back into the room, being present in the here and now. So, as this is a group course, we normally go through introductions and welcome, and we check in with what's been achieved that week and celebrate it. So I'm going to just quickly introduce myself. My name is Sue Hart. So I got diagnosed with ADHD about 2 years ago, and I've basically been on a journey to reduce the symptoms and to celebrate it, because once you're aware of something, then you can change it. But it's when you're not aware of it and it's playing havoc in your life, in all your relationships, in your work life, and you're not quite sure what it actually is, that's when the real suffering occurs. So the diagnosis is a celebration because it brings it home to you that there is an awareness of, and you can then take responsibility and take action, which is what this whole course is about. It's not about information, it's about transformation. And behavioral change starts now. So I've introduced a little bit about what this support group is. It's a very different support group that is more hands-on, more practical. We're going to go through that in a moment. We're going to understand the definitions, and we're going to understand the diagnosis and how to celebrate it. And then we're going to review some treatments available. I'm not a medical expert, so I advise you to seek advice from your medical expert on the treatments. I'm just going to share with you what is available. And then we're going to look at what kind of topics are covered in the course. So why this support group? Really because I guess when I started to look for support groups, there was nothing there that I really felt that was embracing, practical, interactive, goal-orientated, and actually celebrating life. And it's important that we get away from this victim mindset to a growth mindset. Otherwise, we won't change. We can be stuck in the victim mindset and just go round and round and round. Whereas if we appreciate the lesson, then we grow. And there's always something to learn. So what is ADHD, or ADD? Sometimes we hear it called. So I want you to take a moment to actually write down if you have any perception about it at the moment, and if someone said to you, what is ADHD? How would you explain it to somebody? So just take a moment to do that. Okay, let's move on. So here's a definition from Wikipedia. Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder, ADHD, is a neurodevelopment disorder characterized by inattention or excessive activity and impulsivity, which are otherwise not appropriate for the person's age. Some individuals with ADHD also display difficulty regulating emotions or problems with executive function. So how does it affect the brain? Well, one of the leading researchers in the field is Dr. Russell Barkley. And he says people with ADHD are highly intelligent. It's not about the what and how, it's about the when and where. It is an intention deficit disorder. So you've got this knowledge versus performance. It's not that we don't know, we're highly intelligent. It's about the when and where and the execution of it. So if you look at the brain and the neurotransmitters, this is how it was explained to me, is that they're kind of, in a neurotypical brain, they're firing and they're connecting. And what's happening is there's sort of misfiring. So they're not connecting up. And that's because if you look at the chemical constitution in the brain, there's a lack of dopamine. And you can see this dopamine transporter. Hence the reason why exercise is recommended, because it generates dopamine and it can be very good. So that is basically the what is going on in the brain. Let's look at the NHS in the UK, what they describe it as. Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder is a behavioural disorder that includes symptoms such as inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. Symptoms of ADHD tend to be noticed at an early age and may become more noticeable when a child's circumstances change, such as when they start school. Wow, this definition doesn't even cover adult ADHD. And that's where some of the misconception is that we think it's just about with children. Well, no, it's actually adult ADHD. And there's something called onset adult ADHD, which can be developed from childhood trauma. So the information, I mean, the three things that are highlighted here are correct, inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. So this is where we're at, according to ADHD Action. About 1.5 million adults in the UK have the condition, but only 120,000 are formally diagnosed. Why? Well, maybe it's firstly because the definition is not clear, but it also can take up to 7 years to get a diagnosis on the NHS. So there's a lack of clarity as to what it is. So that's something that, could be flagged up to medical organisations to actually educate themselves more about this disorder. Let's look at the types. Okay, so 3 types: inattentive type, hyperactive impulsive type, and then the combined type. It's hard to say which ones you could fall into, and the lines are not particularly clear, because the hyperactivity, it might be that you're not moving around a lot physically, but it might be restlessness in the mind. So thoughts jumping from one thing to the other. This is how the scientists simplify it into 3 traits come out in the personality. 1, impulsivity, so the constant thoughts coming in and just reacting to them straight away without thinking of the consequences. This relates in lack of focus and time myopia. Time just goes and we don't know where it's gone. There's no awareness of time. Risk-taking, high risk-taking, as there's a deficiency in planning, and that can affect driving skills or any kind of operating machinery of any kind. 3rd, constant novelty seeking. We're always finding new ways to do something, even when we don't really need to, but it's fun. We like doing things, like coming up with new ideas. So we're always starting projects, but then finishing is an issue because we get bored and we move on to something else. Do you notice any of these in yourself? Just take a moment and ponder on that. Here's some of the behavioral symptoms. Doesn't listen to what others are saying. Needs questions and directions repeated. Forgets to do things. Zones out during conversations. Disorganized with possessions. Gets distracted easily and does not stay on task. Interrupts and intrudes on others' conversations or in their space. Starts projects but doesn't complete them. Talks excessively. Often leaves seat when expected to remain seated. Often fidgets with hands or feet. Cannot sit still. Constantly on the go. Hence finds it very difficult to relax and unable to control and regulate emotions. So start to take a moment of what does it feel like, any of those behavioral symptoms that you recognize, and what are the consequences of being and living life in that way. So when we get present to the consequences and the effects on our life, that gives us the motivation to take charge. So understanding the diagnosis, there's a diagnosis for children and there's a diagnosis for adults. So it's done on a scale, and it's done on a certain set of questions for children. And if they show 6 or more of those symptoms, then that's the diagnosis. That leads to the diagnosis of ADHD. Diagnosis for adults depends on a strict criteria that relates to childhood, as well as what you're observing right now and struggling in life. So there are tests online that can be taken, but the best thing is to seek medical advice and get a test done by a specialist. So why to celebrate it? Some people that I've contacted about this project have come back to me, said it's awful. Why do you want to celebrate ADHD? It's an awful thing on my life. Well, look, if we focus on the hurt, that grows. If we focus on the lesson, that grows. So it's about what you focus on. And we each have a precious human life, and we have so much to offer humanity. We're not broken. We think differently. Each person is a human being. As my partner Haim said to me, we're not born human beings. We have to learn to become human beings. And there's a learning process in this. And we're all part of a wider ecology. Albert Einstein put it very nicely. Everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. And as the mind, the nature of the mind, we tend to believe our thoughts. This is devastating for your life. You can change that because you have a choice. That's what we're focusing on. Let's look at some famous people with ADHD. Okay. Thomas Edison, Jim Carrey, Richard Branson, Kathleen Ellison. They all have ADHD and they've all been successful. That's what they have in common. It's making people aware of this. How did they do it? So one of the secrets of ADHD is taking those qualities and not thinking of them as weaknesses, but as strengths. So it's about what we focus on. The other thing, though, is to get to know yourself through clearly seeing why you do what you do and introduce behavioral change now. Right here, right now. This is where mindfulness is an essential tool. So let's look at the superpowers and really get present to the gifts to humanity that you have. You have unlimited energy. You have this hyper focus. You are able to focus in on something. Abundant creativity. Some simple solutions. You can just come up with something that someone else doesn't see. Risk without thinking. Okay, sometimes there can be consequences to that. But also you get to start something that maybe provide a lot of value in the world, like starting a new business. That's hence why most entrepreneurs have ADHD. Multitasking, able to do 2 things at once. Stubbornness. Oh yeah, we're stubborn. We don't want to believe what we know. Sensitivity. We're highly sensitive, which makes us empaths. We can provide sympathy. We can empathize with people, and hence gives us a better way to understand people in our life. So how do we reduce the symptoms? First one is raising awareness, and that comes through mindfulness and CBT. The second one, investigate. So when we are calm and we can see clearly, we can start to look and see whether it's skillful or unskillful to carry on with that behavior. The third is that we change behavior. So we have to do something different. When we find out it's not working, we have to do something different. You get what you get because you do what you do. You change what you do and you get something different. The final thing is to trial and test. Did it work for you? Are you getting a different result? And if you are, then focus on what works best. So it does come back to this awareness. Awareness is all about restoring your freedom to choose what you want instead of what your past imposes on you. It's Deepak Chopra. And he asked the question, do you want to be a prisoner of the past or a pioneer of the future? Ask yourself that question. But the facts are is you can't change what you're not aware of. That's why we're celebrating the diagnosis, because it's there. We're aware of it. So here's a question to you. Are you willing to change your behaviors on what doesn't serve you anymore? Are you willing to commit to this course? And what reservations or what will hold you back from that change or introducing that behavioral change now? So let's look at some of the treatments that are available. So on the one side, we have traditional medication. So the stimulant drugs, the non-stimulants, antidepressants. And then we have the non-traditional medication. Increasing your exercise, changing the diet, putting mindfulness into your life, coaching, counseling, CBT, and behavioral interventions. That's what's available. So I don't know if you're currently taking medication or whether you've tried the non-traditional medication. The best thing to do, like I said, is to seek medical advice, because every person's situation is different. Every person's body is different in terms of reactions to medication. But what I will say is that mindfulness, I definitely recommend looking at that and increasing it in your life. And so this course basically covers a number of modules, and they're all recorded, so you can download them or you can start the group course and actually be present and participate in something that's really transformational. So the topics are organisation and planning, because that's one of the major challenges. Reducing distractibility, adaptive thinking, overcoming powerful emotions, learning ways to cope, improving relationships, cognitive restructuring, overcoming procrastination, encouraging flow and creativity, and exploring ADHD and food, and then a final session to review the progress and celebrating your successes. So if you want to take part, take charge, and celebrate ADHD, this is what's required from you. Number one is your commitment. You need to set an intention for a better life. What do you want out of this course? What's important in your life right now? Set the intention. Share the intention. Make it visual. Number two, integrity. A level of integrity is required. So if you say you're going to do, you do. And if you can't make one of the classes or the online sessions, then you restore integrity, because it has an impact on you and it has an impact on others in the group. And we talk through how to do that. And the final thing is tracking. So it's up to you to track your progress, find out what works. You can use a self-scale report, but we can also look at mindfulness. So within the course, there is an actual tracking system in place where we measure the mindfulness that you have now, and then in a month's time, and then at the end of the course. So you can start to see whether your mindfulness has gone up, and then also your well-being. There's something to track the well-being too. So the final thing, the really final question is are you willing to put the work in? And I'll tell you why. Because nobody's coming. Nobody's coming to save you. Your doctor, your therapist, your family, they'll all give you the support up until a certain point. It's for you to take responsibility for your life and to take it forward, because nobody else can. Get present to that. Here's some feedback from some of the participants in the course already. You're always welcome to join one of the classes for free to try it out too. So if you do have any questions, what you've heard today, just get in touch through the website www.celebratingadhd.com. If you want to take part in the course, then fill in the application form, and then when the next dates are announced, we'll be in touch. We are in this together. So come on, reach out. There's Facebook groups, there's Instagram. You can have a free discovery call. Just reach out, because time is short. We're not here for long. And wouldn't it be better to have a fulfilling life and do the things you want to do and spend the time with the people that you want to spend your time with? Here's some of the resources, which are also in the introduction as well, some of the links. So please take a look. One of the first books that I went to was Taking Charge, and that's Russell Barkley's book. You can get that on Audible as well, if you prefer listening to voices. And just leaving you with this quote from the Buddha: "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." Is it time to change some of those negative thoughts that you have about yourself? take charge and celebrate ADHD, because we all have a precious human life and you deserve it. You deserve your love more than anyone else in the entire universe.